Hey, everybody, welcome to the Buck Brief. This episode, Roma Daravi back with us. She is formerly of the Trump White House, where she was Deputy Communications Director. She now runs Daravi Strategies and is trying to help make America great again, once again. Good to see you, Roma.
Nice to be back with you, Beth.
I want to dive into all the political stuff first, although the campus situation, the campus protests, also interesting, and I wanted your take on that. You know, somebody asked me yesterday, though, and I know you're close to all the people in Trump world and know what the strategies are and what they're up to. Somebody said, Buck, how do you think it's looking for the fall, meaning Trump, Biden? And I said, my problem right now is it looks so good for Trump that I can't trust it. Like, I can't emotionally or mentally just get to a place where I'm like, yeah, Trump's going to win this thing, right? So how do you see this where we are right now?
Yeah, we have a tough relationship with democracy these days, so I'm not surprised by your reaction there. But I would say I think we can feel very confident. Right now, we heard recently that President Trump is having the campaign really take the lead when it comes to turning out the vote and asking the RNC to focus on election integrity. He hears the viewers, he hears the supporters, concerns just like yours. And I think there's going to be a big shift with the new leadership at the RNC in a really positive direction where they're focusing on the real problems that we're having with our democracy, which obviously includes election integrity. And, President Trump, although he's stuck in the courtroom most days today, he's still out on the road campaigning and turning out the vote like we've never seen before. So it really is moving in the right direction. And I wouldn't be too shocked if we keep up the momentum, although I won't go any further than that. I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Everyone keeps asking me. It's almost like the joke in Trump world now is, hey, do you see the last poll? And it's like, shh, don't talk about it. You know, like everyone's worried that somehow the momentum that is so obvious now, and that Democrats, I think, are even very, very aware of, and clearly freaking
Right.
out about.
There's a Rasmussen poll that came out this week that had a general election poll that had President Trump up 12 points ahead of Biden. I mean, that is just a beautiful sight to see. You got to love it. You really do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I don't think he's going to win by 12, but I do think he's looking way better than he ever has before. So that's encouraging. The campaigning on Saturday move, I see that has been announced now because of the fact that he's got a trial taking up 4 of his 5 weekdays, which is just absolutely insane. How unusual is it for there to be the weekend component of a campaign like this? I mean, is this a huge shift from what they were planning?
Not at all. President Trump, I was on the 2016 campaign in Trump Tower, and one of my roles was actually organizing the rallies for him. So they're planning all of this based off of the strategic move of turning out votes in areas that they need it. They're not just deciding this based off of the Biden trial schedule. They're going to areas where they're focused on making sure that those voters are ready to sign Trump's name at the ballot box in November. And of course, he would love to be out there 7 days a week, but unfortunately, that's just not feasible right now. So he's in New York. He's been there for over 3 weeks at this point. And hopefully, we'll see this case come to a close quickly. There's really no merit to it. But he's making the most of his time. He's meeting with union workers at 6 o'clock in the morning before the courts open. He's going to meet with police and firemen after work at 10 o'clock at night, bringing the guys pizza. And they love to see him taking the time to shake every single first responder's hand and take a photo with them and ask them their name. These are things that Joe Biden just doesn't do. This week, Joe Biden is in San Francisco meeting with billion-dollar donors, big money to line their pockets, I'm sure, because he is the corrupt Joe Biden that we know so well. And it's no surprise to see that he'd rather be in a room full of billionaires, with foreign interests, no shock there, than meeting with real supporters on the street. I mean, You put President Trump in the Bronx, and everybody in the media was shocked that they loved him. Those of us that know Trump were not shocked at all. We knew the support was there. He's been calling it the silent majority for 8 years now. I mean, this isn't a surprise to us. There's a silent majority still out there. And frankly, it's growing because Joe Biden has made so many people in this country terrified about the future.
I want to ask you about RNC fundraising stuff and also how the ground game is looking in some of these swing states. But we'll get to that in just 1 second. We're here with Roma Daravi, former deputy comms director of the Trump White House, talking about how the Trump campaign is unfolding in 2024. So we'll dive into this. But, you see what's going on with the $34 trillion of debt that we have, everybody, and you realize that there's just so much of our currency that is being chipped away by bad government policy, and the Biden administration isn't going to stop this, and they're going to make it worse. What can you do to hedge your bets, hedge against inflation, have tangible currency on hand in case you need a bug out plan, or just to store value that will maintain value over the long term? Try gold. I get my gold and silver from the Oxford Gold Group. They are real pros. They want to make sure they have long-term customers who believe in precious metals because they can see how it's working for them. Nobody can predict the future, but you can prepare for it. Call the Oxford Gold Group right now. You may qualify for up to $10,000 in free precious metals. 833-995-GOLD. 833-995-GOLD. Okay, Roma, let's dive into, first off, Laura, are you and Laura Trump friendly? I assume you would know each other pretty well because she's now co-chair, right, of the RNC, and I'm hearing that
she is co-chair.
Co-chair, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing that she's doing tremendous fundraising to sort of make up some of the gap that the DNC and the RNC have. What can you tell us about the money race?
Well, they're really focused on turning out the vote. And I think that comes first before the money race. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump thrives on small dollar donations. He has donor events at Mar-a-Lago all the time. Those are the ones that you hear about in the press. What you don't hear about are the small dollar donations. So, Laura put out another video today saying if you have $5, just $5 to donate now, we are turning up the momentum and getting things flush for our president to really run a strong campaign. And they're not going to shy away from that because that's really how you get across the finish line. Each single dollar turns into a vote when it's a small dollar vote.
Yeah, no, it's obviously getting the small dollar donations is something that Trump has been very good at for a long time, and getting the grassroots involved. In terms of the swing states, though, which is the one that you give me the two swing states that, based on the state of play now, you think are the most challenging? I've seen the polls. I know Trump is ahead in every swing state, but the one or two that you're looking at and you're saying that's going to be the real battleground or battlegrounds that determines where this is all going.
Well, I think you've seen right now that Trump is focused on Michigan and Wisconsin for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, Joe Biden is heavily focused on Dearborn, Michigan. He's worried about losing the Muslim vote, and he should be. He should also be worried about losing the very wealthy Jewish vote that Democrats have had really as a stronghold for many years. And any Jewish person that I speak to today has really moved away from Joe Biden. And it really does really actually shock some people because typically foreign policy doesn't end up as a top issue at the polls in November. This time is very, very different. You have a clear juxtaposition between President Trump, who literally moved the embassy to Jerusalem, who signed the Abraham Accords peace agreement in the Middle East, versus Joe Biden, who had a disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, has World War III basically erupting overseas with war on our closest ally, Israel, and just this week saying he's pulling back military equipment from being sent to Israel. So I would say there's a lot of states that we're focused on. I don't want to pick a favorite here, but definitely right now, Michigan is the hot pot because there is a spotlight on it due to this global war that we're seeing play out today.
I mean, do you think it's fair to say that Joe Biden is the most anti-Israel president of our lifetime? I would have to wonder who else it would be if not Biden.
It really almost makes me sick to my stomach when I listen to some of the things and watch really some of the things that Joe Biden is not doing for our ally Israel. We spoke off camera, Buck, about my heritage of Jewish, Persian, Egyptian descent. And, many of my family members are speaking out about this. These are doctors, lawyers, people who have no interest in getting involved in the political process and have voted for Democrats many times. And they are completely stepping away from Joe Biden and calling out everyone that they know in the Jewish community, saying, if you see what Joe Biden is doing and you don't turn away from him now, you yourself as a Jewish person are anti-Semitic. And it is that. That is the reality. So he's going to have a very tough time with these individuals that he really, I think, is kind of losing sight of the fact that they were always with him. This is a numbers game. And it's going to come down to a few thousand numbers in a handful of states that decide who the next president is. And, a little bit here and a little bit there, especially with RFK Jr. In the mix,
Yeah.
is really going to hurt Joe Biden.
Let's talk. You mentioned it's just so I get it right, Jewish, Persian, Egyptian heritage, right? So I want to bring that back into the conversation in a second with the campus protests. What's going on there? Clearly having an effect on national and international politics because Joe Biden is effectively bending the knee to them. And I wanted to hear your perspective on all this. We'll get to that in a second. But the Tunnel to Towers Foundation is an amazing organization. We're very honored to be partnered with here on the show. And they've been helping America's heroes and their families ever since 9/11. Hero first responders and service members who serve our communities and our country. Those who die in the line of duty or are catastrophically injured, and veterans who fought for our nation's freedoms only to return home, fall on tough times, and become homeless. Heroes like Buffalo, New York firefighter Jason Arno and his family. Arno was killed while protecting his community battling a warehouse fire. He left behind his wife and a young daughter. In their darkest hour, Tunnel to Towers provided Arno's wife and daughter with a mortgage-free home. The foundation lifted a financial burden, enabling them to stay in the home where they made memories with their hero. Join Tunnel to Towers on its mission to do good. Support the families of America's greatest heroes, the families of fallen first responders like Jason Arno, plus Gold Star families with young children, catastrophically injured service members, and homeless veterans. Donate $11 a month at T2T.org. That's T2T.org. So when you see this campus stuff going on, Roma, and you see, first, I think some people forget there are actually some Jewish students who are a part of the protest, which I've discussed this on radio as a whole other component of this, right? They blame Israel for the anti-Semitism against Israel, and they think they're being somehow enlightened by distancing themselves as Jewish Americans from Israel. But put that aside. I mean, overall, this issue of Michigan Muslims and campus protesters pushing the Biden administration on a foreign policy matter that involves life and death. What do you make of that?
Well, it stems from weak leadership, Buck. President Trump is a strong leader on the world stage. And not only do people at home respect that, but leaders abroad respect that as well. And you wouldn't even be seeing these wars that we have overseas if Joe Biden was not such a weak leader to begin with. So you have our adversaries taking advantage of our allies. And now you have student protesters that are chanting death to America, death to Israel, right here on some of the most elite college campuses in the world, not just in America. Let's remind the audience that people from all over the world come to attend these universities in the USA. And this is what we're seeing on the world stage. You have the Ayatollah praising these protesters. I mean, how can you possibly support these protesters when you have terrorist organizations telling you that they love them, that they're doing the right thing? I mean, who is on the side of good and evil here? It's very, very clear for everyone to see. And, it's disappointing that the weak leadership that we have at the top has trickled down to the state level, that's trickled down to the university boards. And you have these protesters all high and mighty calling for amnesty and humanitarian aid as they are destroying property, breaking into buildings, destroying statues, defacing George Washington, and hanging the Palestinian Hamas flag on campuses. It's really disgusting. And it's something that those of us from a Jewish heritage never, ever thought we would see in our lifetime.
Do you think, speaking from Jewish American perspective and Jewish heritage, do you think there's going to be a sizable change in the Jewish vote in this election, or do you think that the conservative Jews already knew this and the liberal Jews aren't going to care enough to change their view?
Well, I would say the change has been happening for a while. This is really just the tipping point for most Jewish people. I have many friends from Southern California that are liberal Jews, many friends from the New York City, Northeast, Boston area that are liberal Jews, and they are disgusted by what we're seeing from this White House and the lack of support for Israel. They are speaking out on it more than they spoke out about the Black Lives Matter protests, which, as you know, Buck, was very trendy for liberals. If you weren't talking about it, you were clearly a racist. So every single liberal was speaking out about BLM and those protests. And I would say that my feed, and perhaps it's a little bit slanted, but my feed is really flooded with people from both Republican and Democrat voting backgrounds of Jewish faith that are just absolutely horrified by this administration and what we're seeing right now play out.
Roma, I know that you're a Southern California gal, and you're currently inside the Beltway because you do work on, political matters. You live inside the Beltway. I got a question for you. I want to ask when we come back. You can think about it for a moment. When are you going to join the DeSantis revolution and move down to Florida? You can address that with us here in just a second. But first up, on the podcast, I cut through the noise, the nonsense, the ulterior motives to uncover truths that people aren't just going to tell you. That's what my colleague Mark Chaikin does, but he does it with the stock market. Mark worked on Wall Street for 50 years, and he invented 3 new indices for the NASDAQ. The guy has an incredible track record, an incredible background. And he focuses particularly on artificial intelligence, how it affects our economy now, will in the future, and what it will do to specific stocks. Mark says a lot of Americans, most of them, are going to miss out on a critical turning point in the artificial intelligence frenzy. He says there's a new dawn for U.S. stocks and predicts dozens of specific companies will be impacted in just the next 90 days. Mark has agreed to share one of his favorite AI stocks to buy now with you. He put everything you need to know in a new presentation you can watch at 2024aistock.com, 2024aistock.com, paid for by Chaikin Analytics. Roma, you're Southern, you like warm weather. You can have warm weather with freedom, instead of California, which unfortunately offers you totalitarianism. What do we got to do to get you? Are you considering Florida for your future? I used to live in D.C. too, let me tell you. Wouldn't leave Florida for D.C. these days.
Well, I miss the sunshine and the beach every single day. When we have a sunny day here in DC, you will see me turn into a whole new woman. But, there's always a chance that I'll move down to Florida and the time is right. But when you're in Washington, D.C., when you're working in politics like I am, you have the ability to really get involved and attend events and gatherings almost on a daily occurrence. So right now, I spent a year in New York with President Trump in Trump Tower, moved down to DC and have been here ever since. And those 4 years that I spent in the administration, I really emphasize the fact that when you're working for the government, you are a civil servant. you are not there for yourself. You're there for the people. You're there to serve the people. And, I stuck around DC because I truly believe that President Trump is going to be back in just a matter of months. So it's important that we have eyes and ears in this town. It's predominantly liberal. 95% of the vote in DC is Democrat. And we saw that in the last election cycle. So to be one of the little raspberries in this big blue pond, I think is quite important. And, I'm willing to kind of make that sacrifice right now in order to have a voice in the conversation. And many, as you know, Buck, many DC based shows focus on the Hill. They focus on politics, all different TV outlets.
Mm-hmm.
And it's provided the opportunity for me to really make sure that President Trump and the Republican Party has a voice in the conversation. There are so many great surrogates out there, and I'm happy to be added into the mix and make sure that, the swamp doesn't get too excited and too crazy without someone trying to sit them back down and remind them of the reality of the entire nation.
Man, that was the best pitch for the need to be in the swamp, at least. I've heard it a long time. So good on you. I mean, you guys don't even have beaches up there. And well, I guess you kind of technically do, but not really. And yet you're making
we
it
have
make
some good oysters. That's the one thing,
I actually loved my time living in DC, but I always felt like I was infiltrating the enemy camp by being there. So it's a little bit of a different mentality, but I had a lot of fun. And back in the old Trump, back in the old Trump hotel days, that place was awesome. It was like everyone just hanging out all the time, and seeing people like you, Trump, at the Trump Hotel in downtown, right near the White House. All right, Roma, you have to make sure Trump wins and save the country. So I'm going to let you get back to doing that. But where should people follow your stuff?
You can find me at Roma Daravi on Twitter, Instagram, anywhere you get news. I will probably be there on one of the channels that you're watching. And of course, right here with you, Buck. It's my favorite.
Yeah, she's a smart lady. This is how she knows she's definitely coming back. Roma, thank you so much. Great to see you.
You too.